out more about them. And they just couldn't help but tell me they're just bubbling over with enthusiasm. And I just was so excited to learn how they came here, why, and how did they cope with loneliness and isolation. It made them strong. It made them independent. It made them courageous. It made them, and this is what I wanted to show in my photography, that even though they went through this terrible loneliness and helplessness, it made them who they were. And I still, I still can't believe it, but I've lived in the Maritimes. I lived in Montreal for 4 years, in Guelph, Ontario, and I came here, and the people were different. There was a kindness. I can't think of a better word. They wanted to help you. And doesn't that go back to that early, their homestead? And you had to help one another in order to survive. And it was a real lesson for me. And I guess I often think if I had been born here, would I have seen that? Did it take me to come here from another province to realize? Because in Nova Scotia we didn't have women like that. And I was excited, and I took them back to their homesteads, and finally, after getting to know them and going to where they lived, I asked if I could photograph them. And that's when I got excited, when some of the main photographers in Canada said, "We don't see any tension here. You should have an exhibition." And so that's what brought me to get a Rolleiflex camera. And I think the advantage was that I could do it all in my own little home. And I always had a dark room, and I could print. I think I became a pretty good printer when I was pretty young, because my father was so enthusiastic about photography. So spent many hours in the dark room with him.
So Thelma, I'm just going to pause the recording for a moment here before I move on to my next question, just to see if we need a break and a glass of water. So just one moment. Are you warm? Do you need your sweater or anything?
I'm just right.
You're just right? Okay. How are you, Travis? Do you need any water? Okay. I might take a pause just for water myself. Gets a little warm in this mask. Just 1 second.
And it's hard to breathe.
It is a little bit. Okay.
You can cut out any of my little ahs and ohs.
Oh, yes, but don't worry about that. Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we better put these back on. I'm just going to press record again. All right. Or not, why won't it let me? Having an issue with my recorder. Just going to try restarting it. This is why you always have an extra, right? In case something goes wrong. Okay, so I'm back here with Thelma Pepper. This is Kristin Catherwood on August 13th, 2020. We just had a little glitch with our last recording, so this is continuing on with the same interview. So Thelma, we just were speaking about your background as a young woman, a young married mother, and then getting into your artistic career, and that you especially worked with older people and seniors here in Saskatchewan. And now you yourself, you're living here at Amy McClure House in Saskatoon. And so I just want to speak now to this pandemic we're living through, COVID-19. I'd like to get some of your thoughts and your experiences on witnessing what's happening and how it's changed your experience living here. So do you remember, Thelma, when you first heard about this coronavirus, this COVID-19 as we're now calling it? Do you remember hearing about it?
Yes, it was January 2020. And I had an appointment with a dentist. And my family, when I asked them, they said, cancel it. And so I did. So from then on, I was limited to my room, really. No doctor, no dentist, no... I pretty well just lived in my room, but the funny thing was, when I moved into McClure Place, Amy's, I'd always been a reader and got lists and lists of good books to read, but when the first day I just opened the door, and there was a book on the little library table. And I picked it up, and I read it. And that started something absolutely amazing with me. From that day on, I just read book after book after book, and mostly biographies. Something I love to see stories of sort of poor people reaching to greatness. And I loved Abraham Lincoln and Roosevelt and Gandhi. And so during the pandemic, I was so thankful that by reading, the time went by so quickly. I'd look at my watch, oh my goodness, it's lunchtime already. And so that saved me from those early days. And of course, we gradually got so we could have two of the family come. But at first we just had to talk through the glass doors, and it wasn't very nice. But no, isn't it funny? But for me, that reading was powerful. I even took notes of all the books. And but you see now, you weren't allowed in my room, so it's not over yet, is it? I look forward, I don't know, I sort of think it's not going to end until a virus is found. Maybe, I hope I'm not too pessimistic.
A vaccine? You mean a vaccine?
No, I think they'll get a vaccine, yeah.
Yeah.
I read, someone gives me The Economist, and it's the greatest, every week, it's the greatest magazine to be up to date with every country of the world. And when I read about a woman at Oxford University in England, and she was in the forefront of the exploring the vaccine for COVID-19.
So Thelma, first of all, I just want to ask, do you remember that book you said you picked up? Do you remember what it was? That first book that set you off?
All I remember it was how to bring up a family. How to bring up a family. And you know, it didn't really interest me especially, but I read it. No, it wasn't very long compared to Abraham Lincoln, which was 600 pages. But it was just the fact of reading, I guess.
So you did answer this a little bit already, but I'm going to ask you my next question, which is, when did your life, your everyday life, start to change as a result of the virus, of the coronavirus, and how did it change your everyday life?
Well, you know, there's not much you can change, really. You just live each day with 3 meals, assistant living it's called. My life, I miss companionship because we can't all eat together anymore. I miss that. I dearly miss not having my children come to my room. We can visit outside, but I really miss that. But there's, I'm excited about the 2 books that are already in the, one has already been published and one is at the printers. One goes into quite detail about my early life and marriage, and the other is mostly photography. And then the big exhibition coming at the Raymay. So that makes my days kind of exciting. I want to do a good job. They've given me 4 galleries.
Wow.
At the Raymay.
Wow.
And one for Decades of Voices, and one for, as I traveled to the homesteads of the women, I ran into all the little towns that some were alive and some were disappearing. So that's the second gallery. I wanted to know why you stayed and why you left. And the third one is about the Sherbrooke Community Center, where my husband spent the last 3 years of his life. And I just fell in love with that place. As I coined the sentence, you don't go there to die, you go there to start living, because they have so many artistic things for you to do, including music.
I watched the National Film Board documentary that you were in about that. It's a special place.
It is so special, and you just know that they're there to help you. The 3, what do they say? The 3 boring, helplessness, and loneliness, I guess. The answer for those is pets, plants, children, and companionship. And it's amazing what children can do. They just built a little separate section for children, and I can just see one of the residents picking up a child and saying, "Oh, I'd love to take you home with me." So they know what works. And then the fourth gallery is some commissioned work I've done on other people, including Dmitro Stryjak. Maybe you don't know that name, but even the Mackenzie Gallery has some of my photographs of Dmitro. And then also, I think it'll be called In Grandfather's Time. So it's photographs from 1900 to 1930 that my grandfather and father took and that I printed. I was lucky to inherit the negatives. So, oh yes, and Sharon, the curator, wanted some early photographs of myself. So my dad, he loved photographing all the family, so got lots of photographs.
I'm very excited to see this exhibition at the Ramée. So you've been busy with these projects, and in the midst of this pandemic, so you yourself, you read, and you've been preparing these manuscripts for these books and preparing for this exhibition. But I wonder, my next question I've asked participants in this project is, how did your community respond? And so I wonder if you could perhaps speak to Amy McClure House here, but just in general, your understanding of long-term care facilities and how this pandemic affected people living there, and perhaps also the staff working with the residents.
Yes, I have really no comments on Amy McClure House responding to it. We don't communicate much because we're kind of isolated. For a time, some of the residents had to receive their meals in their rooms, so the community, not at McClure House. I just didn't have much comment from them about anything that I had done. It took, I don't know how to answer that. Certainly in the one book about my life, you'd be amazing the number of all sorts of professions that had written a comment about what they thought of my photography. And you'll be excited to read that, especially the one that David Gutnick wrote. He was the one that interviewed me for the CBC Sunday morning program. And it's an excellent art. But there must be 30 of them or more. And they can't say enough good things about what I've done, and that I would choose the people I did in the little towns. And I'm off the track a bit, but I forgot in the little towns to say one of the ones that left because he couldn't get a job in Saskatchewan. That was in the 30s. He was from Newdorf, Saskatchewan. So I had to go back there, and there was nothing left except one building that was